135. And this might be your last chance to stand. So if you would stand, song number 135 on the first and the last verse is Hark the Herald Angels. Hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King. Peace on earth and mercy mild, God and sinners reconciled. Joyful all ye nations rise, join the triumph of the skies. Give angelic hosts proclaim, Christ is born in Bethlehem. Hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King. Come, desire of nations, come, mix in us thy humble home. Rise the woman's conquering seed, rose in us the serpent's dead. Adam's likeness belly face, set thine image in its place. Set Bethlehem from above. The herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King. Amen. You may be seated. All right, then without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to the kids at this time.
The Herdmans were absolutely the worst kids in the history of the world. They were just so all-around awful, you could hardly believe they were real.
Ralph. Andy. Leroy. Claude. Holly.
And the youngest and meanest.
Gladys.
6 skinny, stringy-haired kids, all alike except for being different sizes and having different black and blue braces where they clung to each other. Of course, nobody even thought about the Herdmans in connection with our annual Christmas. Most of us spent all week long being pounded and poked by the Herdmans at school and looked forward to Sunday as a real day of rest. Then my little brother Charlie told Leroy Herdman that we got dessert in Sunday school, and sure enough, the very next week, there they were, all 6 Herdmans, eyes peeled for refreshments, just in time to hear about the Christmas pageant.
We need a Mary and Joseph and 3 wise men and the angel of the Lord. Now we all know what kind of person Mary was. She was quiet and gentle and kind, and the little girl who plays Mary should try to be that kind of person. I know that many of you would like to be Mary in our pageant, but of course we can only have one Mary, so I'll ask for volunteers.
That was pretty safe to say, since the only person who ever raised her hand was Alice Winlicken, but Alice just sat there, and the only person who raised her hand this time was Imogene Herdman.
Did you have a question, Imogene?
No, I want to be Mary and Ralph wants to be Joseph.
You got it.
Mother just stared at them.
Well, we want to be sure that everyone had a chance. Does anyone else want to volunteer for Joseph?
No one did.
All right, Ralph will be our Joseph. Does anyone else want to volunteer for Mary? Janet? Rebecca? Alice, don't you want to volunteer this year? No, ma'am.
Nobody volunteered to be wise men either, except Leroy, Claude, and Ollie Herdman. So there was my mother, stuck with a Christmas pageant full of Herdmans in the main roles. There was one Herdman left over and one main role left over, and you didn't have to be very smart to figure out that Gladys was going to be the angel of the Lord, who brought the good news to the shepherds. You could just picture Gladys wearing shepherds left and right. Later, I found out why Alice hadn't volunteered to be Mary this year. Imogene had threatened to do something awful to her if she did, and Alice believed her, for as she said,
Herdmans will do anything.
The first pageant rehearsal was usually about as fun as a 3-hour ride on the school bus, and just as noisy and crowded. Mother started to separate everyone to angels and shepherds and guests at the end, but right away she ran into trouble.
Who are the shepherds? What's an inn? What happened first? Begin in the beginning.
The thing was, the Herdmans didn't know anything about the Christmas story. They knew that Christmas was Jesus' birthday, but everything else was news. The shepherds, the wise men, the star, the stable, the crowded inn. So Mother said she'd better begin by reading the Christmas story from the Bible. When she came to the part about there being no room at the inn, Imogene's jaw dropped and she sat up in her seat.
Not even for Jesus? Or was that what they laid the baby in? Was it like a bed? What were the wadded up clothes?
The what?
You read about it. That she wrapped him up in waddling up clothes.
Swaddling clothes. Long ago, people used to wrap their babies very tightly in big pieces of material to make them cozy and comfortable. Now when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judah, behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem, saying,
That's you, Leroy, Claude, and Olive, so pay attention. What do you mean, Mommy? Was it like a teacher? No, Dumbo. He's the President of the United States.
Why, that's very close, Claude. Actually, they were kings.
Well, maybe it's... Well, it's about time. Maybe they'll tell the innkeeper to get the baby out of the barn.
The Herdmans wanted to know all about Herod, and I figured they liked him. He was so mean, he could have been their ancestor, Herod Herdman. The rest of the rehearsals were something like this, but Mother wouldn't quit. She was determined that this was going to be the very best Christmas pageant anybody ever saw, and she was going to do it with the Herdmans too. Then came the night of the pageant. At first, nothing seemed very different. We sang 2 verses of O Little Town of Bethlehem, and then we were supposed to hum some more while Mary and Joseph came in from a side door, only they didn't come in. So we hummed and hummed and hummed. I guess we would have gone on humming till we all turned blue, but we didn't have to. Ralph and Imogen finally appeared, only for once they didn't come through the door pushing each other out of the way. They just stood there for a minute, as if they weren't sure they were in the right place. Because of the candles, I guess, and the church being so full of people. They looked like the people you see on the 6 o'clock news, refugees, sent to wait in some strange, ugly place with all the boxes and sacks surrounding. It suddenly occurred to me that this was just the way it must have been for the real Holy Family. They couldn't have been very neat and tidy either. They're more like this Mary and Joseph. Imogen had the baby doll, but she wasn't carrying it the way she was supposed to, cradled in her arms. She had it slung over her shoulder, and before she put it in the manger, she thumped it twice on the back.
I don't think it's very nice to birth the baby Jesus.
I didn't see why not. He could have been fussy or hungry, like any other baby. After all, that was the whole point of Jesus. Next came Gladys from behind the angel choir, pushing people out of the way and stepping on everyone's feet. Since Gladys was the only one in the pageant who had anything to say, she made the most of it.
Hey! Auntie, a child is born!
And all the shepherds trembled, so were afraid. Of Gladys mainly, but it looked good anyway. Then everyone in the audience shifted around to watch the wise men march up the aisle. Leroy Herdman was carrying something so heavy that he almost dropped it. It was a ham from the food basket that was given to them. It still had the ribbon around it saying Merry Christmas. The Herdmans had never before in their lives given away anything except lumps on the head, so you had to be impressed. Leroy dropped the ham in front of the manger. It looked fun to see a ham there instead of the fancy bath salt jars we had always used for the myrrh and frankincense.
For ruining the whole thing.
As for ruining the whole thing, it seemed to me that the Herdmans had improved the pageant a lot, just by doing what came naturally, like burping a baby, for instance, or thinking a ham would make a better present than perfumed oils. I almost wished for the pageant to go on with the Herdmans in charge, to see what else they would do. I happened to look at Imogen, and I almost dropped my hymn book on the baby angel. Everyone had been waiting all this time for the Herdmans to do something absolutely unexpected. And sure enough, that was what happened. Imogen Herdman was crying. and the candlelight in her face was all shiny with tears, and she didn't even bother to wipe them away. She just sat there, awful Imogene in her crooked veil, crying. Well, it was the best Christmas pageant we ever had. Everybody said so.
I guess that everything's all over now. It was quite a pageant. I still have a plan they wouldn't take it back. They wouldn't take any candy either, but Imogene did ask me for a set of Bible story pictures, and she took them out the Mary picture and said it was exactly right, whatever that means.
As far as I'm concerned, Mary is always going to look a lot like Imogene Herman, sort of nervous and bewildered, but ready to clobber anyone who laid a hand on her baby. And the wise men are always going to be Leroy and his brothers, bearing him. When we came out of the church that night, it was cold and clear, with crunchy snow underfoot and bright, bright stars overhead. And we thought about the angel of the Lord, Gladys, and her skinny legs and dirty sneakers sticking out from under her robe, yelling at all of us everywhere.